Presented by Outriders.
Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and rumors on the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and sometimes the Nintendo Switch. I'm Damon Hatfield, and as always, I'm joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox Podcast Unlocked.
Yahoo!
And Jonathan Dornbush, host of IGN's PlayStation Podcast Beyond.
Beyond, I'm sticking to PlayStation.
And it is that third console we're going to start off with talking about today, the mysterious Nintendo Switch Pro. Rumors keep resurfacing about this thing every few weeks or so. Of course, no official word has come from Nintendo. The latest report this week comes from Bloomberg. Their sources tell them there is a Nintendo Switch Pro in the works for release this holiday 2021. It will apparently use an upgraded NVIDIA chip that'll allow for better graphics and processing, support NVIDIA's DLSS rendering, and then DLSS is, of course, deep learning super sampling. It's a type of upscaling, and I'm going to read a quote from NVIDIA here. It uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to produce an image that looks like a higher resolution image without the rendering overhead. It's currently only available on the GeForce RTX 20 and 30 graphics cards. So if this is true, the Nintendo Switch will be the first console that actually uses this tech. Let's start with Ryan. Is there any way, the Switch now can just barely run some PS4 and Xbox One games with some big caveats? Games like The Witcher 3, it runs. It's a portable version of Witcher 3, but kind of just barely. So I don't know. Is DLSS, deep learning super sampling, the key to allowing the Switch to continue its life and sort of try and compete with PS5 and Xbox Series X?
I hope so, but I kind of think not, only because it's pretty unlikely that a game could come out that would require the Switch Pro. I mean, Nintendo has done that before, so I don't want to completely write that possibility off. I mean, we were talking before we got on the air about the old Nintendo 64 expansion packs that some games did require in order for you to play those games. So Nintendo has required upgrades in the past. I hope so, because I want to see the Switch continue to get good quality, AAA third-party support. I'm not speaking ill. I mean, of the indie support on the Switch. The Nindies are a tremendous reason to own the Switch. They're a great part of the platform. Having those wonderful games be just portable with you is great. But yeah, I want to see. I don't want third-party support on the Switch for the big guns to be just the occasional miracle port like Witcher 3 or Doom, something like that. So I hope so, but I'm not super optimistic based on what little bit of rumored information we have right now.
And Jonathan, what's your take on just the latest rumors on a possible Nintendo Switch Pro?
It's one of those things where I think we've seen time and again, Nintendo isn't afraid to not be at the absolute cutting edge. And, as you were saying, this may be the first console that will use that technology. But obviously, I don't think they're too worried about sort of native 4K pushing the boundaries. I don't think we're going to see a Nintendo Switch Pro box with 8K as the promise like we did with the PS5. I think first and foremost, they're always going to worry about it being a great place for their games. And to Ryan's point, though, I do think, especially now, they don't want to be left behind in the third-party case. A lot of companies have been doing really impressive, surprising stuff when it comes to porting things over, but that can only go so far as the technology gap continues to widen with PlayStation and Xbox. And so it doesn't surprise me that we'd be getting sort of a newer Switch soon, but it also doesn't surprise me that it's not going exactly toe-to-toe with the PS5 and Series X.
The argument could be made that, at least as of today, Nintendo doesn't need a pro version of the Switch. The Switch continues to sell phenomenally well. It's been the best-selling console in the US for 2 years running now. And then, of course, part of this rumor is that this new chip, the new NVIDIA chip that would supposedly be in the Switch Pro, is going to increase the cost by $50 to $100. So you're talking about now a Switch Pro that costs $350 to maybe $400. It's like, Ryan, it's tempting to say to write these off, saying that Nintendo doesn't need the Pro version. Obviously, there isn't. Consumers don't need like much of a reason to run out there and buy a Switch right now. However, these rumors still do keep coming up. They're very persistent rumors. So I don't know. What's your sort of gut tell you on how likely this is to happen?
Well, everything I just said about maybe Nintendo, falling behind in that third party race, which Jonathan was talking about as well. I say that. And at the same point, I am ready to hand Nintendo $350 for a Switch Pro because, and I think this is a big reason why Nintendo is moving ahead with this, is because 4K TVs, the adoption rate just inevitably continues to grow. Prices have just come down year after year after year. And the regular Switch is just really starting to lose its shine, visually speaking, when you connect it to a television. So am I happy to pay $50 more for a Switch that can do, upscaled or, native or otherwise 4K? Yes, it'll have an OLED screen for when I'm playing it on the go. That was part of the last round of rumor that Bloomberg had reported on. Yes, do I want the absolute best way that I can play Breath of the Wild 2? Yes. So, I've gotten 4.5 by the time this thing comes out, almost 5 years of really fun, wonderful times with the Switch that's still sitting over there. I use it all the time. I've been playing Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury with my daughter. So I'm still playing it. I'm still enjoying it. But yeah, I'm definitely happy to upgrade.
Yeah, it's when you put it that way, it's crazy to think 5 years is the time between the NES and the release of the Super Nintendo. Jonathan, how about you? Are you eager to shell out a little bit more money for a pro version of the Switch?
I think it would honestly depend on how the first-party Nintendo games are taking advantage of it, and I'm sure they would be taking advantage of it pretty well. It's one of those things where I primarily use my Switch these days for either indie games that aren't necessarily pushing the console to its limit, or the first-party Nintendo games. And definitely, when I've put some of those games, played them docked, I definitely do miss a little bit of the shine and the polish that you do get when I switch over to playing a game on PS5 or Xbox Series X. But, at the end of the day, I'm still pretty happy with my Switch, but I definitely wouldn't say no to a better running one. I've noticed mine, the vent at the top can get a little too warm and a little too loud pretty quickly these days. And especially if, we're expecting a Breath of the Wild sequel, presumably another Mario in the coming years, things like that. I wouldn't mind if those games also further took advantage of just looking as beautiful as possible.
I also have a nasty case of Joy-Con drift on my left Joy-Con, so that would be another motivating factor for me.
Well, if this thing is real, it's only 9 months away now if these rumors are true. So hopefully, if the Nintendo Switch Pro is real, if it's coming later this year, hopefully we hear something official from Nintendo soon. And now we're joined by a very special guest, Bartek Kmita. He's creative director at People Can Fly, developer of Outriders, a brand new cooperative third-person RPG shooter coming to PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Xbox Series X and S, and Xbox One, and PC on April 1st. Bartek, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to meet you all.
You as well. Let's talk about Outriders a little bit. I'll start off with an easy question. What frame rate and resolution does the game run at on Xbox Series X and S and PlayStation 5?
So the next gen, which means current gen, it's 4K, 60 frames per second.
And then what resolution are we looking at for last-gen consoles, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One?
For this upgraded one, so Pro, and it's 4K, but 30 frames per second. In this oldest one is the 1080p and 30 frames per second.
Got it. I know the game features cross-play. Is there also cross-progression?
So cross-progression is only from the old gen to the new gen, but in the same platform, so from PS4 to PS5.
I would be fascinated to know a little bit more about how you and the team came up with the design of the DualSense haptic feedback for the PS5 version of the game and how that's specifically integrated.
That's a very tricky question because that's what we are doing right now. So we are doing the development. Unfortunately for us, this all new features of the new consoles came a little bit late. So we are trying now to figure out what cool things how we can use it to our game, what we can do, because let's be honest, it's 2 weeks till the launch. So we are trying to figure out what we can add from all these features and what is most important when we can do this, because it's not so simple as people think, maybe, just to add triggers. It all needs to have sense. There is a lot of cool ideas about it. which is now all about the time, basically. So I don't want to say something that later I will have to basically back off. So I don't want to promise a feature or anything that we will not add. So all I can say is we are working on different things. We'll see what we'll be able to do this.
Of course. And I know that the demo features just really the beginning of the game is just teasing us into what the full experience will be. Can you talk a little bit about what we can look forward to that wasn't present in the demo?
What wasn't present? I think the demo is showing more or less the core of the game. It's a looter shooter driven by story. People who like this kind of entertainment, I think they will love the full game, because will be, of course, more things, more loot to find. Here from the player progression, we are only scratching the surface, because we are not even what some people are trying to start building their characters, but it's just the beginning. So all the proper tools, this will come with full game. Even some features like the crafting we are not presenting here. We have quite complex game from this systemic point of view. So we slowly are revealing everything. And even I think we are quite generous with the length of the demo. Still, we haven't had much chance to give everything, because then the demo would probably have to last 5 hours or 6. So we tried our best basically to show the core elements of the game. And people can expect basically more things. More progression, more building character, more items, and a fully fleshed out story. So cool things.
It is definitely a packed demo, and I've had a lot of fun with it so far. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what exactly expeditions are and how they differ from typical side quests in the game.
The expedition is one part of the end game. Depends what we are looking at the end game, but for some people that will be looking for the most challenging content, and they want to challenge themselves. Even playing alone is probably the hardest content in the game, trying to reach the end of the expeditions. Expedition has additional feature, which is time, which it's not on the beginning, is for you to survive the expedition, to beat it. Later, when you will be the more powerful, you can do this in the best time possible. So we want this little bit of competition between players in the very, very high end level to compare their loot. Is that it's not only about survival now. I'm so powerful now that I beat this expedition in 2 minutes, you maybe 2 minutes and a half. So there will be this kind of chase. And the faster you will progress, the better, of course, reward. There will be better rewards. But this is really, really for people who will complete their builds. They will know the game well, and they will know what they are doing, because they are extremely tough.
Gotcha. And will Outriders feature any sort of raid for players to look forward to?
Raid, that's talking about the more players will be able to play.
Yes.
That's how we call it. Not during the launch, for sure not. Right now we are trying, focusing only on this max to free player experience.
So, Bartek, I know the game's just launching, but certainly always curious with a game like this, what does post-launch, post-game support look like? I mean, expansions, DLC, new character classes, what's the roadmap look like?
So yeah, because we said that we are not games as a service, so a lot of people think that, okay, the guys will release the game and forget about it and start doing something else. So that's what I want to clarify. No, we don't want to abandon the game. If people will like the game, will like this world, they will want to stay there more and enjoy the adventures, we'll be more than happy to add things to the game. But if we will be doing things for the game, rather this will be not small chunks of things adding weekly, monthly, not this. Probably we'll go with the more old school approach, like even with demo, you see that we are doing a lot of things in old school way, because we think that not everything we were doing in the past is wrong. Some things we think is still working. So probably we'll be just giving more content together, as maybe expansion packs, maybe some bigger DLC. We don't know yet, because we are focusing this April 1st, and we will see how people will receive the game. What is the will to have the more content, to have the more expansion. We will see what will happen, and then we will decide what to do. But definitely we will not abandon the game if people will be playing it and will want to stay with us.
Well, speaking of the past, Bulletstorm is probably People Can Fly's most beloved game, I would say, at least in my opinion. I mean, you guys have done some great stuff in the past, but I'm curious if there are any lessons from Bulletstorm that you've put into practice in Outriders. Anything from Bulletstorm that really helped inform what Outriders has become?
Yeah, I think overall, not only from Bulletstorm, but from Bulletstorm 2, but even from our other games we work with, Epic, for example, like Gears of War or even Fortnite, yeah. I think without this game we would be unable to create the Outriders. Because in Outriders we had this crazy idea to give this freedom to the player, to let him build his character, that in one guy will be able to use covers for his advantage, to play this game more as a cover shooter, but two other guys will totally forgot about the covers and will go as a more arcade-ish game, less tactical. And because we made the Bulletstorm, it was a lot arcade-ish without cover. Cover was mostly only for enemies. But we created, me personally, I was involved in the 3 parts of the Gears of War and Gears of War Judgment, so I know more or less how to create the cover shooting arenas or gameplay. So through this experience, we'll be able to build the game where we can choose what kind of gameplay you will have. To not force the player. In this shooter, you are fighting this way. On this arena, you have to take sniper rifle and play this way. Here, we are changing the pacing, play this way. We were a little bit fed up of this approach, and we decided, no, let's revert it. Let's even create the game when the player will create his own shooter through loot, through progression tree, and through other systems in our game. So you are right that without experience from the other products like Bulletstorm, this would be impossible to do.
Awesome. Well, the last question I have for you is with regard to Game Pass. Big announcement for Xbox fans. Outriders coming day and date on launch day to Xbox Game Pass. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit. Like, how did that come about? I mean, that's a big deal, launching your game right into Game Pass. And what is it about Outriders that really lends itself well to going right into Game Pass?
Well, that's quite simple. For us, the most important thing was to build the player base, and the Game Pass was perfect for us. So, like, those two natural things to do. So why not to use it?
All right. Well, I'm definitely excited to check out Outriders. Bartek, thank you so much for stopping by the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Outriders is out April 1st on PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, PC, and Stadia.
And Game Pass.
All right, before we go, we have the results of last week's poll. We asked you, have you used or will you use PS5's activity cards? And a whopping 53% of you said, probably not. Way at the other end of the spectrum, only 7.5% said, yes, you use them regularly. Jonathan, do these numbers surprise you?
Not particularly. I think only a select group of games so far for the PS5 have actually used them to any real interesting and thorough way that feels valuable. At this point, a lot of them feel a bit superfluous. And granted, we are just at the beginning where we've gotten a lot of games that were cross-gen, so probably not a lot of them were thinking how to use the activity cards. But when you further think also about how the game help is gated off behind PlayStation Plus access, you need to be a subscriber to use the game help function of the activity cards. That further limits the amount of people who can use that stuff, whereas I would argue that's probably the most useful feature of activity cards. So it doesn't surprise me. I hope we see better and more interesting uses. There have been a few good cases like Control, like Bugsnax actually, and a few others, but it's definitely something that I myself have not really used since launch.
Well, we have a poll for you to vote on for next week. We want to know, are you interested in buying a more powerful and possibly more expensive Nintendo Switch Pro? Make sure to vote at IGN.com, and we will share the results with you next week. And that will do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Ryan and Jonathan. We'll be back next Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, with more PS5, Xbox Series X, maybe some Nintendo Switch news. We'll see you then.